That's okay.
But I'm going to go to hell for my sins here. So I've been operating off my Facebook, and now I'm going to go to, all right. Okay, so I'm going to go to YouTube. And I want to show you, I-O-U-T-U-P-E, enter. What I want to do is show you a, in a second. Go through all that incident, the incident, which we've kind of covered lightly. And listen to Talking Heads is real hot. Within hours, I want to tell you this, within hours of those events happening before our debrief, I was ill back in our dorm that morning. This is just hours after the Rendlesham Forest incident, guys, in the back, because they kind of knew in. And I didn't feel well. I felt metallic taste in my mouth. My eyes were watering profusely. So I already had effects of what we had been exposed to. Not just me, everyone, by the way. I went over, I met Greg Battram, another witness to this, and we had, I went to the chow hall, the mess hall. And I sat down at the police table, and we had a long table with a gun rack, and I had changed. I wasn't in a uniform now. And one of the other witnesses across from me, and he said to me, "What the F just happened to us?" And Jim Peniston was at the end of the table, who wasn't involved. In fact, he was involved night one, but claims he wasn't on base this day. He was at the end of the table, and said, I started talking to him, and Peniston looked at me and said, "Warren, shut the F up." And he verified that 5 years ago, right in front of other people. I said, "Remember that day?" And he goes, "Oh, I was just looking out for you." And I go, "Stop looking out for me, Jim." A nefarious relationship I have with Jim. But so that happened. So I got pissed off, and I told Greg, I said, "Listen, I'm calling my mother." 19 guys, right? We're all mama's boys, one way or another. I'm calling my mother. We're 5 hours ahead of New York time. I went, we had a phone that you could get a free call, but I know they're monitored, right? Nothing had happened. It was sunny morning, sunny out. I went to the base phone box, which you see depicted in that show, except that the sun was out, and the public phone, the red phone box, and I reversed the charges to New York to call my mother. Greg's standing outside the door. And she answers, and she goes, "Hello," and I said to her, "Ma, you won't believe what happened. A UFO landed near the base," and blah, 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 and she's not answering. She wasn't there. So I called the operator. This is 1980, mind you, and things are primitive. I call her, and I say, "Listen, I've been cut off." She goes, "Are you calling from the base?" And I said, "Yes." She goes, "You were cut off from the base," and hung up. And I looked at Greg, I said, "I'm screwed." Never forget it. Went back to the dorm. Well, I was screwed. Long story short, and this is all covered in Left at Eastgate in the book that I co-authored with Peter Robbins. It's all covered, so I can skip it. I forget. I should write a book, shouldn't I? I had a guy tell me the other day, "Larry, you got to get your story out. You ever thought of doing a radio show?" Well, consider it. Maybe one day I'll do a book. I don't know. And it's a funny world. And so I identified myself as a definite problem instantly, because that's just how I roll. And I went back to the dorm. I was still ill, and by 11 a.m. we had a phone downstairs in the day room where I'm out on the second floor. Guy ran up, Warren, got a phone call, ran down, got a voice from operations, and they said, "This is wing operations." He goes, "You're off, you're off." And I'm thinking, I'm not surprised. And then they said, "Meet at this law enforcement desk," which was not a secret underground alien base. It was a little Quonset hut thing where our chief, Malcolm Ziegler, was. So when I got there, my group was all the same rank. Airman, senior airman down to airman. I was airman first class, 2-strike. We get there, and we got Geiger counters go over us by these guys I didn't know. We go into the room. On the law enforcement desk, it was empty. There was no one even in there. In the jail, they had a couple cells for the LEs. And on that desk were documents stacked. I was never brought to Colonel Hall. Never. On those documents, they were all pre-typed, pre-written statements saying we were off duty and saw lights in the trees. I said, well, someone next to me said, wonder if we don't sign them, and they go, sign them. Our first shirt, Lee Swain said, sign them. Signed them, all this. We had to sign down all these things we couldn't read. Into the office we went. We sat on a couple rows of chairs, and I can't recount this in the book. I was debriefed not by Air Force and my brothers. We were debriefed by Office of Naval Intelligence, and the guy was named Richardson and has been established now, was the head of Naval Intelligence out of London, with Armed Forces Security Services guys in that room, which are part of the NSA. We didn't know that then. Suits, not men in black, guys in suits. Went through a whole bunch of things there. They showed us a film, unnarrated. They did, and I've met other people who've seen that. They told us that what we saw was off-Earth technology. Off-Earth something. I forget the word. And these are the reasons for classification, secrecy, and this is a long history, and it was all true to the flag, and all that end started. Remember, we're young guys. Our lives had already been derailed in the last few hours. Imagine the guys that didn't know about this phenomena. Well, some didn't and thought it was the devil. Baptists. That's the guy that Mr. Holt says never did. Imagine how many others. We had the highest suicide rate in NATO on our base, by the way. There's a lot of R&D that went on there. Research and development, all kinds of things. Historically, always did. So, we went through all that. We were released. That night, I, myself, Sergeant Bastinza, met. Some other people went through this. And long story short, it's covered in there. We're hit with an exotic toxin near the construction. We went out to meet a car. This guy came in from my wing, and I just heard, and literally I could see everything. I could hear everything. I couldn't see. Never had my eyes water so much. My nose, I couldn't breathe. I was thumped and put into the back. I knew the wheel well was there. I knew Bastinza was there. I knew that. He's fighting, I'm fighting, but they're literally, I think we're getting stomped in. It was dark. They got us. It's a long story. We were taken somewhere. Now, this is when you get into the MK stuff. We, for sure, this is the Hall, Colonel Hall. I'm saying some things you people might not be familiar with, and that's not your fault. It's 35 years of this shit. But at the end of the day, the tape that Holt desired and Leslie Kean helped acquire was when I asked Bud Hopkins, the great deceased researcher, I want to explore, 1995, I want to explore what happened to me after. And this is what came out. It was a very clinical thing. Wing intelligence is semi-subterranean. Not an alien base, but a scenario was put in some of us where there's potentially science fiction scenario. About 10 minutes of recall. But what came out in the tape is that we were given what was put into us with crash was not sodium pentothal, was sodium amythol. And if you study what sodium amythol does, it's a mind control drug. It's an MK drug. And I named 4 people on that tape. We kept it quiet. And through a bunch of really nefarious bastards involved in this thing, my old deputy base commander got a hold of this tape and has those 4 names. We didn't publish them because this all happened long before the book. We didn't publish them to protect those innocent parties, because they may not have known. Dark things I wouldn't do. I'm glad my conscience is clean on all this. Long story short, really fucked up things happened to us after that. Things were not safe. Remember the movie Marathon Man? Is it safe? It goddamn was not safe. People weren't who they said they were. We had teams flying into that base. We had aircraft. I wrote a letter, the famous Halt memo, which I would be the one to actually get out in 1983. Within days of this event, and Colonel Halt wrote a memo, Unexplained Lights, and it's a historic document. I'm the one that helped get it out, why he hates me, basically, because his name's on it. And I wrote a letter to my mother on the 6th of January. And I wrote it to her, and it's 8 pages of dynamite. Now you'd say, why isn't that in the book? Well, it's mentioned, and my mother's response is mentioned, but we were alone in this. There was no internet. There was too much to do. Until it took Gary Hasseltine, an ex-CID copper, to go, this is a historic document. My letter is the only authentic, original account of these events, not copies, that predates the Holt memo, by the way. Jim Peniston's notebook has been altered and changed, even to confess, so that would not be accepted in a courtroom now. The ones and zeros, they weren't there, now they're there. That's his problem. That would not be accepted now. I moved this to the back. A court would not look at that. It's been touched, tampered with. My letter, thank God my mother saved it, even her bookkeeping is on the back, is basically me trying to explain what happened and mask it in another letter. There's historical things. I mailed it on the 7th of January. It talks about teams coming in. I said, at the end, I said, I can't tell you the whole thing, and in the mail they read it. I'll tell you when I get home. And I was thinking, if I got caught mailing this, I'm dead. It got through. Holt writes his memo a week later, which almost looks like he took it out of my letter. It's that, if you read the real one, it's not been put out yet. Postmarks, everything. Bob Salas, ex-U.S. Air Force captain. He goes, that's exactly APO. It's exact. It's the letter. 2 days after 3 days after Holt writes his memo, my mother responds talking about the hostages being released from Iran. I was involved in that on a TDY in Germany. And what she writes is that all this stuff, and not realizing the scope of what went on, well, Larry, you certainly explained your situation with the UFO. And as you know, what you and others saw was just that, a UFO. It must have been quite an experience. Then she goes on. So here's a trail of custody burying anything to do with lighthouses or I heard something. I didn't sit down with Sergeant Bastinza until April. We weren't allowed to talk to each other, none of us. And Bastinza sought me out. Note came under my door from his girlfriend, Cindy Schultz, which I gave to Georgina Bernay. Still had it, and I've never seen it since. God rest his soul. But you live and learn. I've lost some very valuable. But thank God for my mother saving this stuff. And I saved. I'm kind of a pack rat. And anyway, long story short, I left the Air Force, fully honorable, breach of contract. I had help doing it. Wasn't doing the job. They had me on. I was still security police, but I was in the back operations. They were on me all the time. And my door kicked open, drug dogs coming through. I'm saying they're going to plant. They were doing it to a few guys. They're going to plant me. They're going to put something. They'd done a Steve the Plume. There was all kind of ugly snitching going on, and so I said, I'm out, but I'll come back in, just out of the space. It was very naive. So I got out, and fully honorable discharge, breach of contract. I came out with a code that does not exist on the books. It's a classified code. I think Mr. Holt did say my medical records are classified, didn't they? Well, if you're not involved in something, why would they? Yeah. Oh, forget about it. That's up to you folks. But he said everything's locked down with me. I think he thinks I'm a spook. That's what he thinks. But a spy. Sorry, you can't say that in this country. But no, believe me, you can't. But who cares what people think? I went through that. I came back to the States. I sat with Sergeant Bastinza in his room, and his dorm room, and I said, we got to get this out. We had had a loss of life already we knew about. That was my motivation, folks, by the way. Revenge, because of that. That was my motivator, not revenge. And also that, screw this, this is real. This is as real as the movies. Come home, I was not right. I can remember home 2 days, my sister picks up the phone in the kitchen, and she goes, there's someone on the phone, listen. And there was a tap on her phone. A friend of mine worked for New York Telephone at the time. I said, Dick, come on, it was my drummer, old drummer. I said, can you come by and listen to this at some time? And he came the next day, because it would happen the same time, and you hear people, something going on. And he goes, you got a tap on here. There's a third party on your thing. They don't know you're hearing them. So that was the beginning. Long story short, I wasn't the best of people. It's all in the book. There's no saintlyhood in that thing. But, you know, a lot of drinking, it was what post-traumatic stress does to people. I was a totally different person. Not a nice person. And I just didn't relate to the world. I didn't recognize anything. I didn't know how to live in it at all. And so it's all covered in there. So long story short, one day in 1982, how did you get public? Someone interviewed me recently and said, so when you went to the press, I go, I didn't go to the press. Life is funny. I have a tooth removed in Connecticut, living at my dad's. My mother threw me out at that time with every good reason. And living at my dad's, so you come down here. They didn't know. I wouldn't tell my dad everything. My mother didn't want to know. It was too scary. I'd only told a friend of mine, Harold Son, when we're drinking beer, when I just got home. And he goes, he was the first guy I told on the street back in America. And he said, you said a lot more that you've forgotten. I said, look, it's enough. I'm good. Well, I had this oral surgery. It's funny how things work. And I get home, and you know how that hurts. It was the upper deck. And it's a Hartford Courant newspaper, and I'm reading through it. It's the broadsheet from Hartford, Connecticut, the capital of Connecticut. And there was an article. It showed this woman and her husband and these papier-mâché aliens, and it said, Cheshire couple talk of UFO experience, something. And I said, what a bunch of whack jobs. I remember thinking, what a bunch of nutcases. But it listed where the man worked. And he was a mechanic at a place, a Toyota dealership, in the next town. And I immediately called information on the phones, remember on the wall. I called him. It was an impulse, called him. He gets on the phone, and I say, are you Bob Luca? His wife was Betty Andreasen, if you know the book The Andreasen Affair by Raymond Fowler. I wasn't familiar with it at that time. Very famous, controversial lady. Without these people, you would never know about Rendlesham at all, because God knows where I would have gone. I called him. I said, listen, I've been through something. I can't talk about it with my family. Can I talk to you? I live in the next town, in Southington. Oh, come on over. And Bob just told me the other night, he goes, we have a tape from that night you came. I said, then that would be the first time I ever went on record. Go to their house, have coffee, cake. Weird shit happened. Those papier-mâché things were there. That unnerved me. And I told them, basically, I didn't mention these being things or whatever it was, but I gave them a roundabout safe version. Because back then you got laughed at to shit for talking about just a light in the sky. It's 1982. This Rendlesham didn't come out on the History Channel, folks, by the way, in 2010 with the time travel. It's always been out there. Probably out there longer than some people in the room been alive. But people want to rewrite. So I get there and they say, well, we have a friend who's a cop up in Coventry, Larry Fawcett. And he was an active lieutenant in the police, but he was with an organization called Citizens Against UFO Secrecy. And they deal with the new Freedom of Information Act we had. And we'll hook you up with him. So I had dinner with this guy, Larry Fawcett. And I said, good luck, you'll never get anything. But I felt better talking to these people. Because I'm from a real conservative family. My dad was one of my biggest supporters, but I didn't think he would be. I thought he'd throw me out. Because I said, I think they thought I got thrown out of the Air Force or something for doing something. I just didn't think you could talk to them. My brother and me, when all this came out, got in a fight. We went through plasterboard. We tore our house apart. He said, it's all bullshit. Post-traumatic stress, what happens? My brother's way bigger than me. I threw him around like a rag doll, and I regret it to this day. Destroyed it. I mean, we're going through, it was like the Terminator. This thing in us is not good. And believe me, I'm not the only one. I'm just honest enough to say it. I do regret it. It's real. It's real stuff that went off. Very bad. I'm amazed I'm standing here. And I regret a lot of it. Behaviors, 100%. So this Larry I meet, and he goes through the whole thing. He was a New York guy like me, and he was in his 40s then. He's deceased now. And they were working on a book called Clear Intent, the government cover-up of using FOI acquired documents. And I told them the story, and they're like, oh, we've heard a few rumors from England, because it was rumored that some, or they checked, and I said, okay, good luck with the thing. I gave them the times, dates, the approximates. They filed an FOIA. After multiple hilarious denials, the Air Force was running scared. Out came the Holt memo. Remember the day I get home? We got him, Larry. And I go, you got what? He goes, we got a document telling, believe it or not, I was there for all this, which is magical to everyone else. I was there. It was a phone call. We've got it. And I said, what? I was the most surprised of anybody. Unexplained lights. He read it. I'm like, I can't believe this. Colonel Holt. I go, I remember Colonel Holt. I remember the name. I had no interaction with him during those events at all. I just didn't. Well, there it began, folks. The cat was out of the bag. And October, when you learned about it here, We sent the whole memo to England to researchers. One, I won't mention names here. I'm going to be positive today. It doesn't look good for them, but we sent it gratis. And a particular lawyer from Manchester decided to sell it to the News of the World, which I wasn't familiar with the paper, for £25,1982, which was split 4 ways, well, some ways, between some folks, you know. I have never taken a penny from anything without my name on it in this. I've passed everything. That's one thing I'm proud of. When that first came out, we had a rag in the States called the National Enquirer, and they go, because it was making the news in the States before here, and they said, can you sell this to us for $5,000? And I said, $5,000? That's a secondhand Harley I can get, right? So my father, I remember him saying, I go, I can get $5,000. See, I'm young, you know. And he goes, is your name on it? And I go, no. And he goes, I think you'll regret selling it if you do. Now, 20 years, 30. Glad I listened to my old man. Not a lot, but I did on that one. And that started, folks. That was, the cat was truly out of the bag. Not 2010, guys. This has been forever. Anyway, a price was put on blood, sadly, on this side of the Atlantic. The States are no better with how certain people have done things there either with this, as you know. And that started it. Front page of the News of the World, Sunday edition, October 3rd, 1983. You woke up to that news, UFO lands in Suffolk. And it's official. Now, I know it's a tabloid, but it was a major circulation tabloid. Remember, no internet then. Newspapers were the way. And that was it. It was out. The next thing that happens, you know, look, the first conference I ever did, I was just trying to talk to someone with oral surgery about, instead of my family, someone that's been through something that would listen to me. That's all I wanted. I had no freaking idea about where I would be here 35 years ago. None. Nor a desire. You know, I was aiming for music and, you know, some kind of career in the, creative thing. Because I knew the Air Force was over. I mean, that was done. And I probably shouldn't have gone in there anyways. Probably was wrong material. It was definitely wrong material for the people to suppress this shit. Don't you know? But the next thing that happened, this exploded. It was big news. I talked to certain researchers on the phone here. They called me. Lots of things went on. It's in the book. Some aren't there. I don't like to embarrass people. I truly do. I don't. I could write 3 books on what's going on. One's enough. But by 1984, that's pretty well known. I led the witnesses, the people, 2 other witnesses. Jim Peniston, John Burroughs were definitely not on the radar for another decade, by the way. Charles Holt, nothing. They were still active duty, so that you never meet them. But I'm going to show you something now where you're going to meet other witnesses. 1984, this is quite a famous thing. I had already been on BBC Breakfast Time with Bob Friend. I was in Blacked Out. I never used the name Art Wallace. You always hear that when he used the name. Never. All I said to the authors of the book Clear Intent, and that was the first time the memo was put in it, a bit of my account. First time the account was in ever a book is Clear Intent, not Sky Crash. I said, just don't use my name until other witnesses verified. So one of the co-authors puts made-up name Art Wallace. I have been fighting for 32 years telling people over and over, I've never used the name, it has nothing to do with me, but humanity really does your head in, doesn't it? Art Wallace. Maybe I should do radio one day, I don't know. But write a book, perhaps. Who knows?
Do a radio show.
Let's do one. I don't know how to do it, but this is the humans drive me nuts. But anyway, this exploded. Now in 1984, the Japs come around and they were over here. They come to America. I'm the only guy. I'm the go-to guy. There was no one else backing me up. They're all getting pensions, and everything you think of now didn't exist. I was the guy. I was the only thing. I was more surprised than anyone. And the Japs come to me, and you should see those shows. Man, I looked like a scared deer. I had a friend look at that and say, you look so shell-shocked at that age, like tranced. And I go, I guess I was for a couple decades, easy. And the Japanese guy, Junichi Aoi, with Nippon Television, says to me, it already shot over here and filmed people, He goes, have you heard the tape? And I go, what tape? He went on, you'll hear clips of it in a minute if you're not familiar with it. I'm like, tape? He goes, of the event. He played it. My parents were around, my father, stepmother, and all. We're in the upper living room. And he played it. And we've been shooting all day. I got regressed and all this shit. But, I don't know, I was skeptical on him. I'm a skeptical guy, believe it or not. I'm not a woo-woo kind of guy. And I show me. And sure enough, plays this 18 minutes of audio. As soon as it begins, I'm not listening so much to the voice. I'm listening to the radio communication chatter in the background. I'm like, holy shit, that's our night. All the call signs, they were our call signs. And everyone's at distance, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to have this. He goes, well, if you come to Japan. So I went to Japan, and you think we're in this for money. Now, I could have asked for 50 grand and probably gotten it. I asked, I'll tell you what, I look back, it is funny. I said, can I take my brother? And they go, oh, and they go, how about $500? I'm like, okay. I could have put zeros across the map because when I got to Japan, which was a great experience, I'm happy I did. I have to share a story with you. I have to. I get to Japan, it was like being the Beatles. I landed with Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul, Steve Van Zandt from The Sopranos, Bruce Springsteen. They were all on the same flight. 14 hours crammed in. George Benson, the guitar lead, was up there. It was just jammed. 14 hours going to Japan. We landed at Narita Airport, and we're walking. And Steven and them guys were, you know, they had that Sun City song out at that time. And we're going down these, I was like moving sidewalks. I was like, the Japs got everything. And we're going down, I get to the end, there's all this press and taking pictures, and I'm like, oh, standing back, because, you know, he's in Springsteen's band. It wasn't for him. Listen, the pictures of me, the pointing and all this, it was like the Beatles. I'm like, fuck off. And Steven Van Zandt, I've seen him since, he goes, fuck off, man. He goes, we were embarrassed. And they're like, huh? And I go, and I moved down the line. And they rushed me through a custom. I'm not kidding you. And I'm like, I was scared. I'm like, what have I gotten into? I'm like, this is madness. Out to limos, falling, running in cars, filming and smiling. And I'm like, stop this. Who were they looking at? McCartney in town. This truly happened. It was really scary, to be honest with you. I have film of this walking through, and it was like, I'm Kim Kardashian, her ex-former father, or whatever it was. And it was scary. It was amazing. But Japan being there was a fantastic thing. I hung out with Uri Geller, and he bent keys. He did it. And I hung out with Queen. They were there for the tennis thing. I hung out with Fred, and he goes, it was basically, I was telling you this, why? We were in Nippon Radio. I love these things. I could do another one. We're up in Nippon Radio. So I have done radio. And the Queen was promoting some album, and they were all up there in Japan. I mean, it's like the weirdest. It's like being on Mars. And so I'm sitting in this green room thing, and Freddie smoked, which you wouldn't think, but he was just smoking. Is what are you here for, darling? And I go like this. Well, I went to this UFO thing, and it was, I don't remember what he said, but it was almost like, bitch, please. It was something like that. It was hilarious. And Yes, we're there, and the late great Rick not Rick Wakeman. I know Rick. He's a big ally of ours. Chris Squire died, and I hung out with them guys. There's a big tennis thing going on. That McEnroe guy was over there. And we all seemed, every round I hung out in this club called Lexington Queen. And it was just a great time, but scary. But my mission was to get the actual, I did a lot of TV shows. Johnny Depp was in a movie, a recreation we did. I played myself. We filmed at the base of Mount Fuji. Johnny Depp was a male model before he did 21 Jump Street, working in Japan, and took acting jobs on the side. And his name was John Depp, and he had a Kentucky accent. And he wasn't the John you know now, but he now has a house right near our air base. Life's weird. And he played just extra background guy. In fact, I told him, just run back, and the directors got furious. Long story, and a lot of that's covered in the book, but who knew Johnny Depp? He was not known. I'm thinking, no one's going to see this shit. It's all over the YouTube now. It didn't exist then. I'm like, this is Japan. No one will see this. The effects they did, it was like just short of Godzilla or Mothra flying in on Rendlesham. It was truly like that. And the same people that did the effects on this crazy Japanese movie. But my son falls down laughing at my early stuff. He goes, Dad, your hair, man. You'll see some hair, BG hair, like I scalped Maurice Gibb and put it on. But and these are some of the fun things, you know, funny memories, things. But that's 31 years ago. But what I did do is came back with that audio, but I made the promise, this is where I was dishonest. I told Eunice, he goes, you must not play this for anyone. Well, over here, researchers, main name was, we're taking that tape and saying we have it, not sharing it with anyone. It had never been in the media here. It was in drawers, and I've got something. I said, screw you. I got back. Well, I was already in the process of being an advisor to a program called for CNN, 5 years old CNN at this time, a special assignment, and it would be called UFO, the Bentwaters Incident. I'm about to show that to you, if you're all right with that. It's a 3-part series that aired in February of '85. You will see witnesses all blacked out that you have never seen again, that lived through this thing. And then you see dumbass, who is not blacked out, because I was already known for 2 years with it, but all CNN went to the guys. I said, go to them. If you're lying here, I can say, go see Ed, he's got to tell you. They all, you'll see. Tell you how old this is? No graphics like CGI. A courtroom artist in DC just drew pictures. They didn't consult with me. It looks like aliens are having iced tea on it. But the concept of this is that CNN caught the Air Force in 16 lies. The man that did the thing is Chuck DeCaro. You might have seen the news on Chuck a few weeks ago. He's a Special Forces reservist then, but he was the military and technology guy for CNN. He did this. He knew that these events happened, but he knew the nuclear element was ultimately important. That makes it extreme defense significance for your country. So when they say lighthouse, no, the Admiral of the Fleet, the Lord Peter Hill Norton, who I knew, didn't just hear about him, actually knew him, called him Pete once, didn't like that. And Peter Robbins, God bless him, would always get his title wrong. Admiral Lord, and he goes, it's the Lord. And Peter's like, sorry. So I'm like, Pete, don't worry. It's like, it's Peter. We learned our place, but man, respect to the guy. He was the head of freaking NATO and a huge ally of this thing. And I see other people, oh, Peter, no, he was Oz. He was Uncle Peter. And big supporter, and God rest his soul, very brave man, but again, the head of freaking NATO in his day. That's kind of a good job. It's not McDonald's, is it? So I got that tape, and I get back, and I tell Chuck DeCaro, I said, I've got a tape of the incident, part of it. Now, at this point, I still thought the incidents all must have been in one night, because we came out. I couldn't imagine, how could this happen 3 nights? And no one knew. And so I thought we were responding to what the earlier incident was. It took me a while. That's the job. They used to pick on me on that. It just didn't make sense to me. And maybe anyone else it would, but it was 3 nights. By then, I think I knew. So I took the tape and I gave it to Chuck. And this is the first time the CNN actually responsible played this tape. Now, this program was lost in time. CNN didn't even own a copy of this. I found it in a basket in my house, an old tape. I sent it down. CNN didn't even have it in their archives. This was their highest rated special assignment to that point in 1985. Now, if you're looking for graphics and groove, like now, it ain't. It's definitely historic. But what's important here is the people you're going to meet and listen to what they say. You'll find I ain't the only one. But they have never spoken again. And as I say, with the vile abuse that even some of our own have committed upon us and the memories of those who aren't here, would you? I'm the only one crazy enough to do that. Where's my spectacles? Okay, let me do this. And I hope you enjoy this, but it is a historic, important thing that certain parties would rather you never seen. And they still don't want you to see it, but it's too late because it's on freaking YouTube. And John Hansing, or what's his name, Skunk Man can't stop it. No, he'll probably put a complaint on this too. It's mine! No, it is not. And that is CNN. Forgive the primitive nature. The aliens didn't impart things to me about. Hello? CNN. Hello? U.F.O. here we go. Oh, wait, okay. Did you need to get that? Okay, what this is, Chuck actually, you might have seen, he married the first CNN anchor, the first anchor of American news, Lynn, and they were traveling through the country just 3 weeks ago, stopped at a hotel in New Mexico. A guy broke in, and a shootout ensued between Chuck, he was protecting his wife. Chuck was shot 3 times, the guy you're about to see. And he is recovering in hospital. He did kill the assailant, but the assailant would have executed both of them just to rob them. So that's a sidebar. It never stops with this thing. But there's a very brave reporter, and I have a lot of respect. And he, just forgive my hairstyle. And remember this, when you see my shot begin, I'm walking through the back, my father's back garden, and what they cut out is my father yelling, "Don't let him film the goddamn house!" That happened too. Thanks, Dad. I won't. To cut the lawn after. So
you know the channel to exactly more.
Okay.
Chip is on the digital HD. Chip likes HD.
Get off my TV.
This is the countryside of the county of East Anglia on the east central seacoast of England. It is a quiet land of thatch-roofed houses and farms, coastal marshes and fishing villages. Near the town of Woodbridge is the Rendlesham Forest, 10,000 acres of Scotch and Corsican pine, forested by the British government. The Rendlesham Forest is also the home of the U.S. Air Force's 81st Tactical Fighter Wing, located on a twin-base complex formed by Woodbridge and Bentwaters airfields, located some 6 miles apart. The 81st flies some 150 A-10 tank-buster aircraft. 4 years ago, however, the area adjacent to the Woodbridge-Bentwaters complex was the site of what witnesses say was an astounding event, seemingly taken from science fiction. They claimed that the Rendlesham Forest was the landing site of an unidentified flying object, a UFO.
They always have to put that goofy music on. So 80s. But that's how the forest did look. It's very important.
One of the witnesses is mechanic Jerry Harris, who owns a car repair shop just off the runway at Bentwaters Field.
I suppose it must have been there, as far as I know, for 3 quarters of an hour. Must be something like that. And all of a sudden, I blinked and it was gone.
Gordon Levitt, a game warden who lives in Orford near Woodbridge, saw it too.
First of all, it looked as though it was an aircraft. The light was coming in, it appeared to be quite slow, and then it speeded up and it came towards the lodge. And the closer it got, the more I realised it was not an aircraft.
The British tabloid press had a field day with reports of the incident, with stories of flying saucers, mysterious lights, and even aliens. The Times of London, however, dismissed the incident and poked fun at the other newspapers. It quoted this man, Vince Thurkettle, a forester who works near the alleged landing site. Thurkettle told CNN that the UFO was merely a beam of light from the nearby Orford Lighthouse.
But if you didn't know it was a lighthouse, if you thought it was something small, maybe 2-3 meters across, pulsing about and pulsing white in the forest, yes, it looks as if it's within the trees, and it does appear to light up the trees as well.
But Gordon Levitt, the game warden, who is also familiar with the forest, dismissed the lighthouse theory outright.
At the moment we're standing on the Orford Quay, and quite clearly you can see the lighthouse over there flashing, and the light from the UFO was totally nothing like the light from the lighthouse.
What makes the Bentwaters Woodbridge UFO incident unique is that this official U.S. Air Force report, obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, documents 2 UFO incidents that were intensely investigated by the Air Force. It states,
early in the morning of December 27, 1982, Air Force security police patrolmen saw unusual lights outside the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. Thinking an aircraft might have crashed, they called for permission to investigate. The on-duty flight chief allowed 3 patrolmen to proceed on foot. The individuals reported seeing a strange glowing object in the forest that was metallic in appearance and triangular in shape, approximately 2 to 3 meters across the base and 2 meters high. It illuminated the entire forest with a white light. The object had a pulsating red light on top and a bank of blue lights underneath. It was hovering or on legs. As the patrolman approached, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. The next day, 3 depressions, 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter, were found where the object had been sighted on the ground. The following night, the area was checked for radiation. Beta-gamma readings of 0.1 millirens were recorded with peak readings in the 3 depressions and near the center of the triangle formed by the depressions. A nearby tree had moderate readings on the side of the tree toward the depressions. Later in the night, a red sun-like light was seen through the trees. It moved about and pulsed. At one point, it appeared to throw off glowing particles and then broke into 5 separate white objects and then disappeared. Immediately thereafter, 3 star-like objects were noticed in the sky, 2 objects to the north and 1 to the south, all of which were about 10 degrees off the horizon. The objects moved about in sharp angular movements and displayed red, green, and blue lights. The objects to the north appeared to be elliptical and then turned to full circles and remained in the sky for an hour or more. The object to the south was visible for 2 or 3 hours and beamed down a stream of light from time to time. Numerous individuals, including the undersigned, witnessed the activities in paragraphs 2 and 3. Signed, Charles I. Halt, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force, Deputy Base Commander.
So I think I saw a UFO. Some kind of a spaceship from someplace not of this earth.
Airman Gregg is a former Air Force security policeman who says he was a witness to the second of 2 UFO landings on consecutive days in December 1980 outside the U.S. Air Force Base at Woodbridge, England. Those events were documented in this official U.S. Air Force report released under the Freedom of Information Act. According to the report, in the first encounter before daybreak, 3 security policemen saw a luminous metallic object and followed it through the forest as it maneuvered through the trees and then disappeared. After daybreak, this now retired security police master sergeant went to the site of the incident, along with others, to determine what had happened. To protect his current government job, he asked not to be identified.
And in the approximate location of this alleged craft landing in the wooded area, I found what appeared to be 3 depressions in the ground. The ground was rather soft at that time, but 3 depressions in a triangular pattern. But it turned out that they were 12 foot equidistant from each other, measured from center to center.
An officer who accompanied Master Sergeant G corroborates that account, but since he is still on active duty, he too asked for anonymity. Both he and the sergeant said they took photographs of the physical evidence.
I took the pictures and we thought we had some evidence, but when the pictures came back, they were all whited out. There was nothing on the film itself or on the negatives.
Because the site of the incident was located on public land between the 2 air bases, British police were also called in to investigate.
We showed them the 3 indentations, and we told them the events that had occurred earlier that morning, and their explanation to us was that these 3 indentations were probably caused by hens or rabbits burrowing in the ground trying to keep warm during the night. At that time I told them that these indentations were obviously 12 feet apart, and that was rather peculiar, especially when they were in a perfect triangle. Their reply back to us was that since UFOs didn't exist, they would put on their report that if they were animals that had made these indentations and nothing else.
According to Air Force sources, the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles I. Halt, later the author of the only known written account of the UFO events, advised a heightened state of surveillance in case the UFO returned. The following night, a 4-man perimeter patrol near the back gate at Woodbridge saw the UFO again. Airman Gregg was a member of that patrol.
We were about halfway into the shift, I guess, when we noticed some lights in the sky that didn't seem to follow any pattern of any aircraft that we'd seen. And we watched them for a while and disappeared, and the next thing that we saw was the lights in a forest, in a clearing. It was off the end of the runway, and we called Central Security Control to tell them that we'd like to go investigate it, and they gave us permission to go ahead and go on out. As we got in there, we could see into the clearing, and see a series of lights in there surrounded by like a ground fog. It was kind of common in the area, so we didn't really think too much of it. And we decided to go a little bit closer to see what we could find out. And when we got closer, we began to feel the hair on your arms and the back of your neck and your head, under your head even stand on end. It's like there was a real big static charge in the air.
Let me ask, were you armed at the time?
Yes.
What kind of a weapon were you carrying?
M16.
Did you load the weapon at any time?
Yes, I did. I loaded it and put it on semi-automatic. We didn't know what we were encountering, and we knew it was something that that was totally beyond our realm of experience. We'd never experienced anything like this before. And about that time, we decided that we better get the heck out of there because we were getting a little too scared. And we took off at a run and went back to our vehicle.
As they reached their patrol truck, he says there were about half a dozen vehicles and about 30 men strung out along the roadside. Among the first to arrive was Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles I. Halt and a three-man team. One of them is this sergeant. He is still on active duty and asked to have his identity concealed.
Right now, I do believe that UFOs exist. Up until that point, I've been skeptical. Now I believe there may have been someone else there.
Although the Air Force contends that there is no audiovisual evidence of the Bentwaters incidents, CNN has obtained a tape recording made by Lieutenant Colonel Halt during one of the encounters. The 20-minute tape covers segments of events over a 7-hour period. Colonel Halt and his team started searching for the object and found what they thought was the same UFO landing site reported a day or so earlier.
We found a small blast, what looks like a blasted or scuffed up area here. We got very positive readings. See, is that in the center? Yes, it is. This is what we're.
According to Sergeant B, the team member carrying the Geiger counter was selected by Colonel Halt to take photographs and radioactivity readings.
Sergeant Nevels, who is a disaster preparedness specialist, he operated the Geiger counter. Well, he was the expert on it, so he carried it and he operated it.
Colonel Halt recorded the radioactivity data in detail in his official report. One of those readings was taken from a tree facing the suspected landing site. Colonel Halt also noticed unusual abrasions on the nearby trees and ordered Sergeant Nevels to take photographs.
There's other trees here in the doors, you'll see what's happening. Yes, so I think before this the landing. Okay, why don't you take a picture of that? Remember your picture, you ain't got to direct this down. It's going to be on the tape. I've got a tape measure with you. This is the picture, your first picture will be at the first tree.
And according to the Halt tape, there was additional physical evidence.
Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like someone came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter. In 148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmers burning our animals. They're very, very active, making an awful lot of noise.
It was at about that time that Sergeant B and the others apparently saw something.
Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the three buildings again. Straight ahead off my flash right there. There it is. Hey, I see it too.
I'm standing at the landing site described by Colonel Halt in his report. Behind me is the light from the Orford Lighthouse. It flashes every 5 seconds and is less than 10 miles away. The question remains, however, how could Colonel Halt and his men mistake that light on 2 different nights for something radically different? Critics say that the light the men saw also appeared at roughly 5-second intervals, and so the lighthouse beacon must be the source of the light. Here's what happened when we synchronized the Halt tape, noting each sighting with the lighthouse beacon. The initial sightings, at least, appear to coincide.
Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the three buildings again. Straight ahead off my flash right there. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. Chinese horror. Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. You'll see that maybe a quarter, half hour, maybe further out. Now switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees. Is it back again? Yes, sir.
We asked Sergeant B if he and the others could have been mistaken.
I've never once seen a lighthouse that moved. And this object moved because we followed it. Under no way could that be the Orford Lighthouse.
Just move to the right. Yeah, off to the right. Strange.
the woods up there. Can you do that, Lake? So carefully, come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 or 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it starts turning a hollow center, a dark center. Yeah, like a pupil eye looking at you and winking. And it flashes so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye.
Later, Colonel Halt and his men are reported observing other objects. His report describes a red sun-like light that threw off glowing particles and broke up into 5 separate white objects. Immediately after, they noticed another object in the sky.
Moving out fast. There's one on the right standing away too. Yeah, look to the north. Okay, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. I'm observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. Is that real?
On the Halt tape, he and others continued to observe the objects for several hours, and Halt noted it in his report. Colonel Halt would not comment officially to CNN about these strange incidents.
My first impression is that I thought they were children, because my mind wouldn't accept what I was seeing. I thought they were children in snowsuits.
Larry Warren says he's willing to risk ridicule to tell about his encounter with what he says appear to be alien beings. Larry Warren is today a sales representative for a medical company living and working in a typical suburban community. But a little over 4 years ago, as an enlisted man in the U.S. Air Force, he claims he had a most untypical experience when he came face to face with something he admits he has trouble describing. Warren was assigned to security at the Bentwaters Woodbridge Air Force Base complex in England. He says he was a witness to the second of 2 UFO encounters on succeeding days in the forest separating the 2 bases. And CNN has found, except for Warren's description of the alien beings, others who were there who have given strikingly similar accounts of the UFOs.
Well, it was predominantly, it looked like a fire at first. That's what we thought it was. So it was more like a red or reddish-orange color, but it had other colors moving around in it.
We saw flying objects containing maybe other people or another life form.
There were a number of different phenomena seen. A triangular luminous flying object with a red light on top and a series of blue lights underneath. A circular translucent ground-hugging disc. Various lights moving erratically about the night sky, one of which occasionally beamed a shaft of white light downward, and a luminous pulsating red-orange sphere.
Didn't look solid at all, just looked like a self-admitted, piece of light. It was just odd. It seemed like it was no sooner there than it blew up. Not outward or upward, it just blew down with all these sparkles and different colors of light. Indescribable, because it's beyond me how this happened. We weren't injured by it, and I was very close, and it changed, and that was the weirdest thing about it. It changed into the ship that people had seen earlier. The 3 cops had followed out there.
Warren's description of the transformed object appears to match what 3 airmen reportedly saw at the same location the night before. But Warren's story takes an even stranger twist.
At that point, we saw people, or whatever you want to call them, coming out. They didn't come out. There were no doors or anything on the ship. These things moved out. There were 3 of them, and they were covered with, they had light around them. And they came out, they stood there, and they actually floated to make it more complicated. Beings, exactly. No threatening motions were made at us by them. They didn't communicate with me at all. Our base commander was there.
Who was the base commander?
Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Williams.
The official Air Force response is that Williams, now a general, did not witness the alleged incident. CNN has contacted 2 airmen who Warren says were present that night. Both say that something happened, but neither confirm nor deny Warren's story. A non-commissioned officer who helped conduct a subsequent investigation of one of the reported landing sites says his superiors seem to have little interest in pursuing it.
Things seem to be clamped down quite suddenly, and nobody was talking to anybody else about it. And when I tried to find or ask specific questions about things, nobody knew anything.
Larry Fawcett is a full-time police detective. He is also the co-author of a book which uses government documents to support its argument that there has been an official cover-up of the UFO experience. He says military personnel have good reason to be reluctant to talk about their experiences.
The reason for them not talking is usually that they've been threatened, or they fall under the regulation JNAP 146, which talks about if anybody talks about UFO events that have been reported in the military, they're subject to fine, loss of pension and retirement and every other thing, and even jail time.
CNN began asking the Air Force for information about the Bentwaters UFO incident 6 months ago. Throughout, the Air Force has been slow to respond, and when it did reply, the answer was usually, quote, unknown, end quote, or in some cases apparently misleading. For example, when CNN asked, are there any photographs, tape recordings, videotapes, drawings, or descriptions of any kind in Air Force files, the official U.S. Air Force reply was, quote, there was no audiovisual documentation done, end quote. However, as we reported earlier in this series, there was an audio tape made during the second of 2 UFO encounters. CNN has also found an officer who says he drove the base commander to a waiting airplane to deliver what he was told was a motion picture film of one of the UFOs.
We drove out and I asked him what was in the film. He said, this is and we actually have the picture of the UFO here. And he got off the Jeep, went to the aircraft, handed the film to the pilot, the canopy closed and the aircraft took off. I asked him where it was headed and he said, Germany.
Larry Fawcett says he thinks the Air Force could be involved in a cover-up.
When they've been telling the public for 30 years there's no such thing as UFOs, how can they reverse themselves now and say there is and they've been lying and covering it up?
If it is a cover-up, then the American public may never know what those airmen saw at Bentwaters in 1980. If they were merely Keystone cops who were hallucinating, as one critic suggests, then what are the national security implications of those same airmen guarding a strategically important airbase where nuclear weapons are reportedly stored? If they weren't hallucinating, then what are the implications of what they actually did see? When CNN recently asked the Air Force about the possible existence of movie film of the Bentwaters UFO, the official Air Force response was, the United States Air Force stopped investigating UFOs in 1969. This is Chuck DeCaro, CNN Special Assignments.
Thank you. That's a historic piece, so I'm going to stop that. What do you think, guys? Could someone put the light on for a minute? Thanks. That's something that a lot of people don't want you to see, but the history, more was out back then, and it's all been kind of rewritten, and it's a mad business. So anyway, that happened, and oh man, the cat was out of the bag on that. Let me just put the brakes on this. I don't know how to do that. Hold on. You know, here.
Okay,
That's, what did I do? Okay. I think so. No, it's all gone now. I was going to show.
Your face back up?
I was going to show another YouTube.
That's all good.
Are you okay for now?
Yeah.
What you got out of there is, and I think maybe you're a little surprised, is that we're verifying, these are officers verifying film. People wouldn't confirm or deny what I was saying. It's easy to say no. Well, that says yes, doesn't it? There's a lot of things, and people have never spoken again. That was Captain Mike Verano that drove Gordon Williams with the film. So it's not me saying it, and it's been out there forever. And in fact, CNN went as far as saying where nuclear weapons are. And yet certain people still don't say, and that makes it defense significant, where this stuff should be really pissing you folks off, even though it's a long time ago. You were lied to about the nuclear weapons, and you have these beams coming down that hurt our weapons, by the way. We had containment teams come in, and these weapons, there were a number of weapons rendered useless on that base.
It's happened elsewhere as well, isn't it, over the boat?
Yeah, and so that was a factor too, and this is something you should get mad about, but it's been out there in front of you for a long time.
Larry, when you say that, right, yeah, you said they were rendered useless. Could they have been actually dangerous? Could they, you know?
I don't know. I saw containment teams come. They come in and they clear everything. But there were the Canadians, thanks to them on Declassified, UFO Declassified, through other entities found out that we had 100 tactical nuclear weapons on base at that time, and that I believe 60 of them, 16 or 60, I'm forgetting, that one is too many, were rendered ineffective. And that came through an outside body, through the Canadians about our base. and structure of the nukes and all. I wasn't involved in that end of anything, but this is your country. I mean, this is real stuff. Now, these guys are all highly trained people. I was a trained guy too, and none of them are lying. And they're all a lot of them are still on active duty, but the people you see now on the History Channel all the time, none of them are even around yet. These guys are just telling it like it was. Yes, not everything's there, and they're going easy. And I noticed it's CNN saying alien being. I never said it, but that's what the press would do then. Well, if it's not us, there's an alien. I don't know. That's putting it too much in a box. Don't know. But I'm not the only one. Obviously, say we saw vehicles carrying people or another life form. When Ray Gulius is saying, and here's another thing over here which I'm so tired of. It was a big rumor mill. It was in the pubs. It was this and that. You just saw Ray Gulius say things were clamped down. No one was talking to anybody else, to include me. So that's another myth. There was no rumors at all. Not here, except some civvies seen some things and talked about it, but none of us were. But it's funny that I had my mother's letter I had sent her, which is the only, now, the officially first written record of these events. But even when we did this, it was still in a box at my mother's. I just never thought of it. I never thought I'd write a book. Comes to the book. So in 1984, that same year, I met my co-author Peter Robbins. Said, hi, how are you? It was a conference with Alan Hynek. I knew Alan Hynek. Anyone you name, Jacques Vallée, John Keel, I knew real well. He's a miserable old guy, that guy. You better have Zachariah Stitchin. I've done gigs with you name him, I know them all. And a lot of them are dead now, man. I've been around a long time with this stuff. And I was one of the upstarts with Stan. Will remember this. We were at a conference with Stanton Friedman. And he's like, everyone's with Stan, you know. But Stan's, I remember he was hitting on these girls, I think, and these women. And he's like, you know, Stan has the Stan beard going on forever. And I just walked by and I'm like, oh, I know that guy from that UFO movie and he goes, have you seen my latest film, to these girls? I'm like, damn. I got to know Stan real well, and over the years. And he's, you know, he does what Stan does. And I've been in a room in a TV show, New Orleans, and we had pizza, and I said, oh, we're going on. Me and Peter are going to go film a thing. We left Stan with the Dominoes. We came back, and the pizzas were all empty, and he just, it's true. And he comes out, and he had a heart attack. No wonder he did. And there were 4 empty boxes there, and I'm like, I'm Stan, you bastard. And he's like this. Basically prove it, you know. You know, I don't see evidence of it. Evidence of no empty boxes. So, characters. I could write a whole book on the characters I've met. I re-met Peter Robbins in 1987, my co-author on this book, which we are proud of. This is the updated one. And it is the only one to date still written by a witness. Not the new one. That was written by Nick Pope. I wrote my own stuff. Peter wrote his. And it was 11 years, about $100,000 between us of money. Research, travel, this, that, and the other. If you're pulling a hoax or a scam, you're not going to be dropping your own cash on it. It kind of defeats it, doesn't it? And we never thought we'd get there, and we've had all kind of mountains. When I met Peter, I spoke for MUFON at the the big conference at the American University in '97. And I had to do a paper, and I'm really not a do-a-paper kind of guy. But I had to do it, and I stood there, and I got stopped midway. I got too political. I was young and kind of, you know. And I had Walt Andrus, who was the head of MUFON at that time. He's long gone. I think he's deceased, must be. And he comes up and told me to stop, and I'm like, what? And this is like 700-800 people. I'm like, what are you saying, man? And he says, no, you must stop. It was like Nixon or something. I go, listen. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, I can't talk. I said, I'm being censored by the same people that bitch about government censorship. So I will go outside on the lawn, and if anyone wants to hear what I got to say, come on with me. I emptied the room. So I was enemy number 1 for MUFON. Never worked for them again.
Just coincidentally, Walt told me that story in Sheffield.
Absolutely true.
He had passed away.
Yeah, you know, he I guess was nice to like me. I don't know what across MUFON policy was. You couldn't talk about you couldn't do this back then, guys. I mean, the world's so different now. You just didn't do it, but I did it. and I know what you were going to get for doing it. So I met this little fella again in the hall, and he goes, "Hi," I walked back in, and Whitley Strieber was there. The reason I wrote a book is I was misrepresented a whole bunch of books by '85, about 3 or 4. And Whitley Strieber was sniffing around to write the book Communion. He was known as writing The Wolf and The Howling, all the scary War Day, all those books. And so Whitley, I got to know him a little bit. He came to these conferences I did, and he said, "You should write your own." And I'm like, "Okay," and came up with the title and started it. And I had a different guy as a co-author, and he was not a experiencer. He didn't live it. I couldn't relate to a non-living it guy. I can understand, and you're lucky if you have it, but I wanted a second voice that at least was touched by the experience. I met this guy, Peter, and he goes, "Oh, we met a few years back in Westchester." I didn't remember it at that time. It was basically a "Hi, how are you?" And he looked at me and said, thinking, "Good luck with this guy." And now we met. And that began our 28 years ago we started. And I had him lined up a meet. I knew he was going to be my co-author before he knew it. I didn't even know if he knew how to write. I just knew it. I knew the title of that book, I knew all kind of things, and I knew it would get published. And it took 9.5 years with us two. And if I didn't have that guy, I would never have completed this. So I went through a divorce doing that, my first one, I've done 2. And we've gone through everything. But I will tell you, at the end of the day, Rendlesham has become whatever it is, more than me, it's not about me. But I'm very proud of the fact that I was the one to kick the lid off the can. No one else did. I did. I paid the price for doing it, but I knew there would be one because it was a real thing and it involved governments. It's an international incident. It's not a lighthouse. It cost lives. It cost damage with all of our families. It's like a rock in a lake in the rings. It is the great big ugly. That's what I call it. It's nothing nice about these events. It's not fun. I see people, "I love that case." It's not a case. There's nothing to love. It's not a case. It's lives. There's a phenomenon. It's at work, but it gets overshadowed by all the dark things the federales, yours included, did to us with impunity. Our base let us get thrown to the sharks. They had outside entities that deal with this. The civilians. They're not government, CIA. That's why the government say, "We have nothing to do with it." They don't. They farm it out, the slants. Slant operations. Contractors. That's who contains this stuff. Fronts. You're not looking at it when you see it. It ain't them. It's that thing over there with the sign Burger King. But it ain't a Burger King. It's so wrapped up in black project, black money, black drug money. It's the biggest secret in the world. They lose control. They're losing it. The control's so desperate now. The world's so different from them days. So different. So anyway, on the better note, I'll just show you one thing, and I think I can close it with that. But let me, 2 seconds, forgive the PowerPoint, my version of PowerPoint. You're lucky I don't have like slope things to send up for you. This is my next thought. I wrote this book and I can't spell for beans. So there's like Kurt Vonnegut in person, the author told me, he goes, "Kid, there's no magic in getting writing books. The magic's getting fucking paid for it." I swear to God, told me that on 8th Avenue. Mr. Vonnegut, can you give me any advice? I should have said run. National Press, LBB, I just will finish with this, because it's 35 years, guys. I won't burn you out. Not 81, 201. Here's my dramatic finish, like Liberace. Hold on, Russ. No, you're all right, bud.
I'm standing.
Oh, I hear you, bud. As time went on, I was very honored. I've done a lot. I've spoken to UN, all kind of things. I know senators. You're looking at the only person, whistleblower, in this subject, this country, my country, anywhere, that has had his United States passport suspended for doing just this. His never happened to anyone. And I want to thank the UFO community in America when that happened in the 90s. Before our book came out, it was once I started saying we had nukes, because you still won't hear other witnesses say it. I got sick of the bullshit, no defense certificate. I said, well, we had nukes, and I did that right in Sheffield here. Nottingham, sorry. And I lost. My passport got suspended. Eventually it was removed, and it took, do you know what an attorney general is? The Attorney General of the United States is the top lawman in the land. We were very lucky within a year. It kept me from coming to England because they had things lined up. It kept me, it took Peter, got us in touch with Ramsey Clark. And Ramsey Clark was Robert Kennedy's #2 Attorney General under John Kennedy of the United States, not a local lawyer. Kennedy's assassinated. He is Lyndon Johnson's #1 lawyer in the land of America, Ramsey Clark. Nixon comes in '68. Different Republicans, different thing, but Ramsey Clark was so respected, he remained Richard Nixon's Attorney General for his first term. But Ramsey Clark came out against the Vietnam War and all these things. Ramsey Clark got me my passport back. Because the only way you can lose a passport in America is if you're a convicted felon. You don't have a right to one. Right? Class A felon, then you don't know. And this happened to me, and it has never happened to anyone. It happened to me. And the reasons were for speaking about sensitive defense issues in a public forum on foreign soil. This is a fact and real. And if I was in America right now and I saw some old school UFOlogists, I would thank them for not doing a fucking thing about it, or even backing me or standing with me. Just like that picture I showed you earlier. They all ran like schoolgirls. So, stand alone, baby. And I didn't do too bad doing that, did I? But I've had great friends and support around me also. I am stronger than my enemies, clearly. But I want to show you something and just end on a positive note. You know, last week, if you follow this stuff, was not a very positive event for certain people where my old Charles Halt came. I want to make a statement about Colonel Halt real quick. He was a nice guy on the base. He was a very open officer. And we have had a dynamic. I got his document out, his name's on it. I caused hell for a lot of people. I didn't know it, but I found out last year how much I stopped people from progressing to general, all kind of things, because I blew the whistle. Didn't intend to do that, but I didn't think of the cause and effect. So some people really, you know, are pissed off still. You know, and I would be too. Who is this little SOB doing this? But, and there's things I don't know about this. I've put my finger into the bee's nest, which certain people I call would know more. At the end of the day, he was a very, I'm going to say this, and I'll be different than maybe what you were there and a few others. When I was there, I met Colonel Halt. He was nice and accessible as an officer. He liked to hang around security forces. He wasn't us. He liked to hang around us. He was like the cops, and he was a very fair guy. And I remember that about him. Then our dynamic, you know, obviously this has changed that. I'm not going to go into anything like that. But I will say I respect his service in Vietnam. I respect the fact that he was very open kind of guy then. I am so sorry because it hurts the overview. Doesn't hurt Larry, it hurts this, because we're thinking about look who's doing what the who again in the schoolyard, and we're not thinking of the bigger picture, a breach of your national security in your country by our government and yours, and an adverse effect on nuclear weapons secretly housed in your country and adversely affected by an unknown phenomenon. And you're told it's a lighthouse. And so that's the tragedy, the interpersonal thing that goes on in Rendlesham. But I guess that's how this is all designed. Let them eat each other. Meanwhile, the people that do pull the strings are laughing. They laugh. They go, it works every time. They know the psychological studies. And we're all getting older now. I mean, he had us all. We're out there now. And now, like Roswell, they're all dead. We're alive, but I'm the youngest end of it at 54. You know, it's going to be one of those dominoes, and God knows what this will look like in 30 years. Who knows? But you should get mad about Rendlesham for every reason. Not because the way maybe someone says bad things about me or this guy or that. really about what happened. I think it's pretty clear to you it wasn't a lighthouse at this point, because you've heard British people also were affected by this and seen things. But I just want to show you a thing and get to shut up and just drink your beer. I used to go to a bar called Sandy's, and that was their t-shirt, just shut up and drink your beer on the back. Anyway, in 2001, I was honored to join 20 military guys, Boeing. They ran bases. A lot of them guys said, we've come forward because of your book, this book. I was honored to hear that. They said, you just didn't know how the machine worked. And they go, but that's why you were able to do what you did. You didn't think. Kamikaze, Warren. At the end of the day, I was invited to D.C. I lived here. My son was 6 months old, and it was the honor of my life to stand at the National Press Club. I was the first Rendlesham guy to do so. It was the largest press attendance in the history of the MPC in D.C., even the president speaking at it. And the press didn't come and shoot and leave. They stayed for 4 hours. And you know what was on the news at night? Nothing. BBC, we had guys, stringers, in tears. Nothing that night. Huge suppression. I want to end it, I would not have been brought to the joy of my life, my son, without going through these events, without being stationed in England. The life it's a long, I said, boy, how you ended up here. Touring this book in '97, Times bestseller, #7 in England. Who knew? We're over John Le Carre at that time. Look, rank amateurs like us. Get Liverpool. I want Liverpool. The publicist says, they don't even read there. I'm not kidding. That's what they said. And I said, get us something in Liverpool. So we got some paranormal gig. My ex-wife was taking tickets on the door. I met her. I go, And long story short, without this and without what happened to me, I would not have my son. I think any one of you know, it means a lot to me. And this is we lobbied for a week, congressmen and senators in D.C. We had many conferences in Congress, everything. This is we had brief ups. We're at a big long table. The guy, remember Hill Street Blues, the show? Well, Chief Daniels was the host. I forgot who he was then. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. I thought that was big when I was in the base. This is my up, and we just had a brief up just to introduce ourselves to the press. I'd like to end with this. I would never change a thing with what I've done, ever. I would do a few things different, but I still wouldn't. I don't think I did half bad a job. But this was my testimony in May, just before September 11th happened in America. I was living here then. But may I show that to you? Would you mind? And it's very brief, and I meant every word, and I would do it again. Russ, could you hit the lights, mate? Or my friend? And I'm quite, and you know, there was no script.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the press. My name is Larry Warren. 20 years ago, in 1980, I was a security specialist assigned to RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge, NATO Air Force facilities in Suffolk, East Anglia. I had a secret security clearance. I guarded our backline nuclear weapons that were stored there at the time, without the knowledge of the people of Great Britain. I went through a portion of a 3-night UFO event where objects made incursions over our WSA, fired pencil-thin beams of light into them, and adversely affected the ordnance possibly. These objects were on the ground on 2 different nights. Potentially there was another life form seen. This is an unpopular truth. These events were of extreme defense significance to not only Her Majesty's government, but this government as well, and they are still shrouded in secrecy. They are very complex, they are very vast. This is more about a human rights issue than just a UFO issue. 20 years ago, this room would be empty. I see a turn in history. This is history in motion, but unfortunately it's history with a security classification. I would be more than honored to swear under oath that I experienced what I did, I saw what I saw. These events produced not only, after numerous denials by this government, a memo by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, our deputy base commander, which reads like science fiction. It also produced, years later, an on-site audio tape he made as these objects performed their feats and did what they did and violated airspace. These events are of extreme defense significance. I hope my brothers in arms that went through these events will be given immunity at some point and be able to join us here. It is an honor to share the stage with all of these people. people. And I think for all our children, my son Dennis, God bless you, son, we can change the world. You're heroes for being here also, and I will testify in front of Congress if asked to. God bless. Thank you.
That's all I got. Thanks. Thank you.
Questions for Larry?
Oh, yeah. I'm open for questions. Is David around? Please, leave me alone now. Does anyone have a question? Anything you want, you know? Go ahead, mate.
Just one thing for Colonel Halsey last week about weather bomb on the technology on the base was mentioned in your book.
Yeah.
And he said it wasn't. It was decoying missiles for the Russian satellites.
Well, the decoy missiles came in 1982 after I was left the base. This is something not really my area. I saw Peter Robbins deals with these weather modification things, and that's more his area of interest. Unfortunately, we found a lot of witnesses, and if you read Left at Eastgate and read interviews with them, that saw similar things that look like what they call cloudbusters. Yes. Could I put my mark on it? I couldn't, but I saw those things. The weapons, the missiles, there were dummy missiles on Woodbridge, not Bentwaters, by the way. I saw what I saw in Bentwaters. And I don't know what they were, but they sure matched, similarly, what Peter showed me was a cloudbuster. I didn't know what the hell any of that was. But then you have, again, our friend has made a stab at something, but is inaccurate already about what he's saying. Is it that? I don't know. A lot of R&D there. Think of that weird storm in '97. What do I know? That's more Peter's area, but what I do know, I did see things that looked like the cloudbuster, right? But more militaristic. Every now and then, not missiles. I know what a missile is. I was trained killer by the time I got there. I was trained to protect missiles. But we didn't bring the dummies in until after I left, and that was mimicking the cruise missile. We didn't have them in 1980 or 81. So if that helps, but no, again, it's kind of a misdirection. It's an idea, it's a theory Peter has. Me, I'm open. I don't know what the thing was. But we have another series of sergeant that was stationed there that verified, yes, we saw these things, and they would move around the base. Couldn't go any further than that. It's not an area of interest of mine. I think it was just one more arrow being fired last week. Sadly, not accurate again, but I don't know what it was. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Anything you want? Nothing?
Were those suspected cloudbusters truck mounted?
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
There were wheels, and it was asking if these things, the long poles, I thought they were a communication thing, right? But they weren't missiles. They were long poles that came off as OD green. And I first saw it, we went to Princeton University, Peter and I spoke there, for the College of Orgonomy, which is an interest of my co-authors, not mine. But I did see there is this weird I met these doctors, big science guys. And I'm like, holy shit, they did show me some weird stuff with that orgonomy stuff. I got enough trouble. But then I looked at the, I was seeing these brochures in the 80s, and I'm looking and I'm like, my God, we had them on the base. Now that would sound, why add to, who needs any more? But as we proceed, I said, I saw things that looked like that, but they were more military looking. And then we found another, two sergeants, and their interviews and names are in our book. So, but no, they weren't missiles. I don't know what they were. And it's just kind of weird because the weather thing, how that forest is not the forest that these things happened to us in 1980. But I just where certain critics would have at least some basics and facts to really launch the attacks because they're easily knocked down. But I don't know what it was myself. It's a theory, it's an idea. I think we were so shocked by the what happened there in '87. I mean, if you've ever seen a war against trees or a nuclear weapon go off, I know there's the the hurricane that came through and all that. I believe there is weather modification at times. Was this it? No. Do we need to add it? I don't know. Some people are interested in it. It's an idea. I couldn't prove it at all, but I did see things that resemble what they call cloudbusters, and they weren't missiles. We didn't have the dummies yet. Thanks, brother. That's a good question too. Thank God Peter's here to be going through the whole orgonomy. Dr. DeMeo.
Just Facebook him.
No, I love the guy, but that's his bag. It's not mine. And there's all, kind of like hippie stuff to me, but the, anyone, anything, man. Ask
Bearing
me.
in mind it was the height of the Cold War, what do you actually think you saw in the figures? Were they aliens or...
Yeah, no, I'm 100% convinced it was non-human technology there for 3 days. I think there was an operation in place. It wasn't a random thing to vector this stuff in and study it in close confines. I think we were put in a trap. And to see how this phenomena interacts with military people, being observed by special forces units in those woods, thus the pictures I showed earlier, that have guilty consciences. The thing got out of hand. It was being studied, filmed, and everything I'm describing that I saw was frontline. There was a whole back line that we didn't see, and thus that's the command post over at this campsite. This was a much bigger thing, and many of us were put in place on that base. Now I know, not by random, but because of prehistory. This is a threat, and people with prehistory, by the way, with this phenomena, are a threat to the power base. Who do we answer to? But no, 100, and what I saw there, I have a history with this stuff in my life. I don't know where it's from. I know where it ain't from. Not from Detroit. But this, I did see things. The word alien, it's alien to me. They weren't human. It was non-human thing that went on. And how it was all convoluted with sodium amythol. And you see, we were contained rats, and so you can start to sweep, fireproof everyone. This thing got out of hand. It was to be, these guys on the first night were lured. They were lured out to those woods. There's no question. And this thing just got bigger. Look at the picture I took midday, 2 days later. This shit's still around. I didn't see it then. I didn't know I'd be in front of it later. And so that's my view. That's my view. I know we're not alone here. I know that. I'm not in the proof business. I'm in the truth business, my truth. But I'm not out to sell you nothing. It's also the reality of this stuff is subjective. You wake up to some reality you live with, and you go, I know we're not alone. Real quick story, 1975, 40 years ago this month, driving on Niagara Falls, Western New York State, New York Thruway, midday, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, car windows open, my mother's driving, my sister's in the back. She wouldn't have cared if we ran this thing over or a U.F.O.H. She just doesn't care to know about it. If it doesn't have Gucci on it, she doesn't care. And we're driving, and I was 15, and we're driving, and there's a field. I'll just tell you how weird this fucking world is. New York State, upstate, right, very rural, and we're heading throughway, big highway, right? And here's a tree, a lot of traffic, and here's the tree, just real quick, but big tree line. And as we're driving, probably about 50, I think the speed limits had dropped to 50 then, or 55. This thing breaks out of the trees. It's running, and it's running about 30 miles an hour. It's about 50, 60, or 50 yards off the highway. The highway's level with this field, marsh. Big red barn out that way. And I'm like this, and there's a stick. There's a deer in front of it. The thing's about 9 feet tall. It's a reddish fur all over it. Its shoulders mass would be like here. Its head was no neck. It was a massive, upright thing running. We have no apes in North America. This wasn't an ape. And it ran in a way that it seemed like it wasn't even on the fucking ground. Now that's odd. Running. Boom! Takes the back legs right out of this big buck. We got big bucks there. Broke its legs right there. I saw it happen. The deer flew into the stream, and it jumped in, and we're now passing. State police car right in front of us, swerving to pull over, and the thing's in the water, and I just looking, and it looked this way at the highway, but there's no neck. The movement I did like that, it did with its upper body. It was wrong in every right way. And its face was a human. It was more human than it was a gorilla. And it was about 9 to 10 feet tall. And it was massive. So all I can say there, I looked at my mother and we both went, Bigfoot, instantly. Little I know, back then I used to think all that stuff, that Rodgers-Patterson film is 100% authentic. There's no suits that can do what that did in '67. They still can't do it now. That is a real thing that lives in our woods. And I would, if you're interested in that subject, I would suggest you read the books The Missing 411. Amazing, and what the cover-up that's going on in our national parks, and how special forces respond armed. They don't interact with no one. They know what's going on, but these things have a little more paranormal than they are this. And I do believe they have taken people. I don't believe they're all their tribe. They go back years. They're tribes of something, but they're not all from here. This is my belief, because I've seen it. Now, am I up to prove it? No, but I know they're in the woods, and I ain't camping with you. Any other question? And I know it. I'm not up to it. Fucking amazing. This thing, this big, in New York.
Do you think them beings are here all the time? They're all coming and going.
Absolutely, my friend, I do. He asked if do I think these. With my life experience, I absolutely, my friend, believe they have permanent bases on this earth. They've had it forever. I believe after spending time with this guy, Mr. Russ, who's put this fine conference on, I have to tell you, I've seen a lot over the years in real life and in other ways. Are you folks from here, Filey? I got to tell you something here. This gentleman lives here, and he's put this conference on, Russ here. And I was shown some video the last few days, and he always say, I got video. And there's some great stuff out there. I've seen what he's filmed, and I think you're going to see it too. I actually have some, I'll tell you what, I've seen something I went, holy shit. But it's in your backyard, friend. I live on the other side of the country. Good luck with this one. Amazing. So absolutely a permanent presence. Steve, in his talked about the ancient history of all this, and this is nothing new. We are just pawns. The power base knows that's all real, but they got to control us. But who's controlling them? These things are, where are they going to land on the White House lawn? They don't recognize the seat of power. They don't need to. They're magic. It's so different, and there's so many different kinds. That's my view and my experience. Not just Rendlesham. I didn't need that. I've had a lifetime. I've had more than you're allowed, I guess. Well, you had more than one side, and people, that won't work. Sorry. So keep an eye out. Like you said, if you're a smoker, that's even better, because no one lets you inside no more, right? You go outside, and I've seen more shit by smoking regular cigarette going outside. Like you're smiling, yeah, I know you. And but if you just take a look, and this country is rich in this stuff. Rich, the world is. It's everywhere. It's every day, and the history has been right in front of those paintings and the cave things. It's right there, going, hello, who's your daddy? Anyone else? They are the gods. That I don't know, but Russ, he's gone again, but if he did stay, he could answer that. I don't know. You got a beautiful place here, though. I think there's one right out in your bay here, and you'll see something that might make you think so. I was just, oh. He has a, I'm not going to say this, but it's just worth it. Do we take a break now, Steve?
We can do, yeah.
I want to thank you all. And I hope I showed a little more class than you might have experienced last year. When I teach my son. Thank you.
Okay, guys, just to remind you.